everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know some people are still hopping in, but let's go ahead and get started. Many of you have joined us here today because there are so many options when it comes to study abroad, and you're probably asking yourself, how do I choose a program? But you're in the right place. We're here to help you, and hopefully we're going to help solve that question and make that a little bit easier for you today. And since there's a wide variety of options to choose from, this means that there's likely a program that's the right fit for you. And we're here to help and find that one and help you choose your next adventure. So my name is Shelly Alfaro. I'm the Associate Director of our Alumni Relations team. I was once in your shoes asking myself that exact same question. It's so very overwhelming. What program do I choose? But with some help, I was able to find the right fit. I ended up studying abroad a whole semester in Paris, France through ISA. So I am an ISA alum. We'll be playing a couple rounds of this or that in a bit, but be sure to follow along in the chat. Enter your answers to the questions that we'll be asking throughout the presentations, and maybe why you chose that answer. Maybe someone else's response will give you some ideas that you hadn't really considered. So before we get started with this or that game, I first wanted to chat about purpose. I always love asking students, why do they travel? Why did you choose to study abroad at the university you attend now? Why did you decide to study engineering or whatever they're studying at their university? And that's mostly because at the root of all those questions, I usually can decipher some pieces of that student's purpose. Maybe they've never traveled outside of their home state before and they just want to try something new. Maybe Duolingo and K-dramas aren't cutting it and they really just want to practice their Korean abroad in South Korea. Maybe they want to learn how Australians are combating climate change and saving the coral reef. And maybe they just are open to any experience. They just want to fulfill their elective credits, which is totally fine. And some students, they sometimes just want to learn more about their heritage. So there might be some students that are like, I want to learn more about my Irish heritage, and they go study abroad in Ireland. There could be a multitude of reasons when it comes to what your purpose is. And the nice thing about going abroad when you're in college is that you really get to explore all of these. So there are different types of programming that you can do abroad to achieve your goals, whether those be professional, academic, or personal. There's the traditional study abroad experience, but there's also other opportunities you can do, like research, internship, service learning, which is volunteering based with an academic focus. There's also Christian study abroad. Next question to consider is, and another great thing to consider is when. A lot of times when students think about study abroad, they think, oh, I can't do that. That's a whole year. I don't have time for that. But actually, there's programs that range from anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to a whole academic year. Some of our programs in the summer, for instance, also have quite a bit of a range. They either can be 2 to 3 weeks to maybe up to 8 weeks or 12 weeks. So you could be abroad over the whole entire summer. I've worked with some students that were planning their study abroad semester program for the winter so that they didn't have to deal with the winter in the Midwest, which honestly, I understand. And they ended up studying abroad in the Pacific during the summer because it was the opposite of here. And then I've worked with a student, for instance, who was a student athlete and did the June session for 4 weeks so that she could come back for training in July. So it's up to you, whatever fits, but we have full year, semester, summer, and J-term options. And lastly, where. Regardless of where you study abroad, you're going to be pushed out of your comfort zone. But the question is, how far outside of your comfort zone are you willing to go? So to help navigate all these amazing destinations, I've brought some of my friends and colleagues to join me and help answer some of these questions. For you in the audience, again, please enter your answers in the chat as we go along. Some of these questions may be easier for some of you to answer than others. And for some of you, these might be a bigger priority as you're choosing a program. So up first, the first question, This can really set the tone for your destination. Nadine and Betsy, I know you both studied in different places. Did you see yourself speaking English, or were you looking to hone in on your foreign language skills? Betsy?
Here are mates. Hey guys, I'm Betsy and I studied abroad in New Zealand with TEAN. When I was trying to figure out where I wanted to study abroad, I knew I wanted to go to an English-speaking country. I was searching for wanderlust without the language barrier, so I knew New Zealand was the move. As I was trying to figure out my uni options, oh, just so you know, Kiwis refer to university as uni. I stumbled across University of Otago, and honestly, I couldn't imagine studying anywhere else. It won me over with its chill vibes, proximity to nature, and its tourism program too. So during the week, I pursued my tourism courses, or what New Zealanders call papers. And then on the weekend, I was backpacking in the most incredible places. That Polaroid is actually a photo of me backpacking around Mount Cook National Park. It was so cool. My friends and I, we'd always joke the green screens were unreal in NZ. But yeah, once I figured out what school I wanted to go to and what country I wanted to be in, I needed an affiliate program to get me there. And that's when I came across TEAN. TEAN's sense of adventure really intrigued me, and it didn't disappoint either. Orientation week was so fun. It was jam-packed. It was in Queenstown and we sailed around Milford Sound, which was even more iconic in person, so beautiful. And we also experienced free fall with bungee jumping too, which was so dope. But yeah, as we were getting settled in, my friends and I, we tried out the Kiwi lingo. We're playing sweet as if something was dope, trying to be locals. But the thing is, we had only been there a week, so I don't think we were convincing anyone. But that reminds me, when it comes to learning a new language, there are a variety of options if that's something you want to pursue. I know for me, I took Maori because I wanted to have a better understanding of the New Zealand culture, indigenous culture rather. But that's completely up to you. You can just stick to English the whole time. That's totally chill. But I will say too, when it comes to the Kiwi lingo, it's a way of connection and it's a really fun way to get to know not only your study abroad friends, but just the locals in New Zealand. Whether you run out of ice cream, you need to go to the dairy or the corner store, or if you had heaps or loads of fun with your friends, it's just a way to kind of connect with the people around you. And I will say too, as someone who did study abroad in an English-speaking country first before going to other destinations that have a language exchange, it's a great way to kind of get into traveling. I had the courage to eventually travel to South America for work, and I could not imagine doing that without having gone to an English-speaking country first. So I highly recommend.
Awesome. Well, salam alaikum, مساء الخير, bonjour. My name is Nadine El Malam, and I studied abroad with ISA in Meknes, Morocco twice. For me, language exchange was a huge part of my decision to study abroad and was ultimately the reason why I chose to go to Morocco. Another huge motivator, like Shelley had mentioned before, was the opportunity to get in touch with my heritage. So my parents are immigrants from Morocco, and I really wanted to experience life there firsthand to kind of get a better understanding of my family history and our culture. Speaking of culture, Morocco has a lot of cultural influence from throughout the ages and all around the world. The music, food, art, pretty much everything is like this super rich blend of Amazigh, African and Arabic influence, Muslim and Jewish heritage, French and Spanish touch. So seeing this rich living dynamic everywhere I went was like so breathtaking. I'll say too, when I wasn't in the Medina bargaining and practicing my Arabic for souvenirs or making couscous and cookies with my host mom, I was on excursions from up and down the coast, Tangier, Rabat, Casablanca, camping in the desert during the weekend, or visiting the Blue City, Chefchaouen, like you can see in that picture. Studying abroad in Morocco gave me all this and so much more. It got me out of my comfort zone. It got me into something way different from what I was used to. And it helped me understand better myself and brought me in touch with some really awesome people. But before I get carried away, talking about language exchange, right? Our program in Meknes, Morocco is the ultimate language exchange destination for a lot of reasons, particularly because Moroccans speak so many different languages. So if you want to pick up some Arabic or just practice your French outside of France, our program in Meknes is the one for you. I'll say too, even if you don't opt into these courses, you'll still pick up some Arabic that'll come in handy, so no sweat, like salam alaikum, hello, labas alik, how are you? Shukran, thank you, and marhaba bik, welcome. And by the way, it's important to note that all of our destinations, regardless of the official language in that host country, have English classes, like classes taught in English, and on-site staff that are fluent in English. So even if you're not looking to learn a language, these locations may still be a good fit for you. Otherwise, some other great destinations for language exchange and immersion include South Korea, Italy, and Costa Rica.
Thank you. And Nadine, I love that you mentioned that you can also study French in Morocco. I did not know that was an option when I was looking at programs. I obviously went to France, but I was studying French in college and international studies, so it would have been a really great program to consider. But in retrospect, I mean, I don't regret studying in Paris, but still, it would have been a great option for my language learning goals. So my next question for you both, hustle and bustle of the city or more laid back vibes? Betsy, how about you go first this time?
Cool. Well, if you're looking to live where the action is, South Korea is the move. From K-pop to kimchi, South Korea truly has it all. It's a great place to dive into cutting edge technology and modern innovation too, which reminds me, we just added a brand new esports program. So this summer in Seoul, be sure to check it out, especially if you're looking to enhance your NBA 2K skills or your Fortnite skills too. But yeah, regardless, Seoul will keep you on your toes between the busy city life and the academic rigor too. Seoul is actually home to Korea University, which is a Sky University, which is basically an Ivy League. It's a very, very good school in South Korea. But if you're looking to take a break from, from the books and the screens, there are so many things to do in Seoul, whether it's enjoying some savory barbecue, Korean barbecue, may I add, or even enjoying a silent disco party too. Find yourself dancing in the streets. But if you're thinking, oh, I kind of want to taste the Seoul with a more laid back vibe, then Busan is for you. Located not too far away from Seoul, it's surrounded by mountains and sea. Busan is the program for you. It's home to Busan National University too, which is again, kind of like that coastal laid back vibe, great restaurants to check out, and nature is not too far away. As someone who studied abroad in a coastal city, it's nice to kind of have like that somewhat big city vibe with that nature feel too. But I will say too, before I forget, there are some other cities on this list that kind of fall into that busy category. Italy has some great programs as well. I don't know if you guys are on TikTok like me, but Italy's been trending and we have some great programs in Rome, Milan, and Florence. So be sure to check that out. And oh, before I forget to mention this too, Paris, it is not the city of lights for nothing. It's a great city to study abroad in as well, between its fashion vibe, art vibe. It's definitely worth checking out as well.
For those of us who are looking to take a break from that hustle and bustle though, and to go somewhere where we can connect with nature or relax like a local, our programs in Ireland are good choices for you as well, particularly in Galway and Limerick. For one, Galway is known for colorful cafes and pubs, as well as world-class entertainment and art. Street performers and musicians are at every corner, so it's a city whose vibe is immaculate for our music lovers in the crowd, and whose sit and sip culture lends itself to long afternoons of vegging out at your local cafe. Limerick similarly has art and culture across the board, with one of the longest footbridges in Europe and plenty of medieval monuments to behold. It's a riverside city as well, so sitting shoreside on the River Shannon is another great way to take in the natural beauty of Ireland and enjoy its peaceful environment and relax. I don't know about y'all, but if I'd studied abroad in Limerick, I would have been on that shore playing guitar like every day. I'll say too, like Betsy had said before, our programs in New Zealand are also very chill, as our programs in Costa Rica with its rich biodiversity and environmental emphasis, Thailand with its warm climate and floating markets that you need a boat to navigate, just putting that out there, and Australia with its white sand beaches and famous Aussie no worries attitude. And I'll say as well, though the majority of our study abroad programs are held in major cities across our host countries, the more laid back options are the ones who are in close proximity to activities and places that'll help you get away from that city hustle, like museums, neighboring historical sites, and beautiful spots in nature for things like picnics, hikes, etc.
I love that you both kind of pointed this out, but there's some countries that offer both vibes. I know that that's a case for a lot of our host countries too. So I really quickly wanted to mention, I'll drop this in the chat, our Instagram handles for ISA and TEAN. Be sure to follow us and check out our stories, including those that are highlighted. We've had participants on our ISA and TEAN programs, including the ones that are abroad right now, doing IG takeovers. They share different aspects of their time abroad, including their housing, their campus life, different trips and museums. So in those different countries that have multiple vibes and you're trying to figure out what's the right destination, be sure to check out those stories. Oh, thanks, Lily. Okay, now, while all of our programs have top-notch academics at outstanding host universities, some of our destinations have an emphasis on different cultural highlights. So the next question is museums or beach? Nadine, what do you choose?
So we like to say that learning doesn't just take place in a physical classroom, right? Your host city is like a living, breathing museum all on its own. So if you're looking for a destination with culture and history at every turn, consider Italy. We have several program sites in Italy, including Rome, also known as the Eternal City, where you can visit monuments like the Trevi Fountain and the Colosseum. In Florence, you'll find the Uffizi Gallery, where you can see priceless works of art from the Renaissance period. And in Milan, you can make a trip to the Santa Maria del Grazie convent to see Da Vinci's mural of the Last Supper. Each of these cities are part of our program in Italy. So if you've got a love for history and culture, these are the places for you. Otherwise, some other great historical hubs include our different cities in England and France. These are Culture Vulture certified and approved, but I will say I did miss out on the beach when I was in Meknes. So Betsy, take it away.
Thanks, Nadine. Yeah, if you were searching for the perfect swell like I was, be sure to check out Australia. Home to 12,000 beaches. You can't come to Oz and not hit the surf. But if you haven't surfed before, have no fear. The experts will teach you during orientation week. Whether you're in Sydney or Brisbane, you'll be ripping turns in no time and having a blast while doing it. I know from my times during my study abroad, I was surfing quite a bit the first few months just to kind of get away from the university life, to enjoy nature and just kind of relax and enjoy. But speaking of orientation, you know, if you're looking for an experience down under, maybe swimming with Nemo and friends, get stoked because TEAN also offers orientation week with some scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef. That's right. So you could be scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef, enjoying all the coral and fish life around you. And it's honestly just a great way to absorb the Australian culture too. With that being said, it's not all sun rays and waves. Australia is home to some of the top universities in the world, between James Cook University for zoology and International College of Management for Sydney of business too, in Sydney. With that being said too, there's some other great destinations on this list that have some great beaches. Colombia and South Africa have some really solid beach spots. And as you might see, Spain and South Korea are on both of these lists, which is really cool. Spain is awesome because you can study in Malaga and be less than a mile from the beach, but you can also be in Madrid too, nearby all the culture and Spanish history as well in Madrid. Oh, and before I forget, South Korea is also a really solid option as well because Busan has that nature vibe, really easygoing, really chill beach vibe. And then you also have the metropolitan tech scene of Seoul as well. That's a bit busier, a bit more artsy, just to kind of give it a little twist.
Great advice for this question. I studied in Paris, obviously. I mentioned that before, but I had access to, world-renowned museums and the cultural opportunities. That was what I wanted. It's very much was of interest to me. And if you've seen Emily in Paris, I honestly kind of related to her struggling to order croissants at the beginning and ordering gyros, but it was part of the whole overall experience of why I chose more of the museum and culture piece to the Paris program. So the next one I have for you, speaking of Italy and Australia, whether you're looking for a short hop over the Atlantic or spending a whole night on a plane, distance to your destination can also play a factor for some people. So the next question is near or far?
So with direct flights from New York City to San Jose, Costa Rica being only 5.5 hours, which by the way is shorter than a direct flight from New York City to San Jose, California. Costa Rica is the closer one. Costa Rica is a perfect option for study abroad that's not too far from home. San Jose in particular is the economic, political, and cultural center of Costa Rica, filled again with museums whose objective is preserving national history and culture. Its urban character is also known for cafes and restaurants for every palate, so from your small local coffee shops to vegan restaurants. On the other hand, Heredia, also known as the City of Flowers in Costa Rica, is a relaxed university town with plenty of parks and plazas, and it's actually not too far from the beach or from the busier San Jose either, in addition to being not too far from home, all things considered. Heredia is also one of the richest coffee producing cities in Costa Rica. So if we had like a this or that for coffee versus tea, Costa Rica would be the ultimate global coffee spot. And again, being close to home is especially nice because this makes visits from your folks back home, friends and family, a lot more accessible. I know when I went abroad to Morocco the first time, a lot of students' families like came over for a week or a weekend and got to travel and visit. So similarly, locations like Athens, Greece, Paris, France, or Barranquilla, Colombia are destinations that are conveniently located and close to home.
Thanks for sharing that, Nadine. And honestly, when I think of study abroad, I can't imagine not going far away. You know, it took me 17 hours to get to Queenstown, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I spent most of the day on the plane, but it was definitely worth it, and I can't recommend going far away enough. Thankfully, Thailand isn't too different either. And one of the best parts about Thailand is that your flight will be the most expensive part because Thailand's super budget, student budget friendly and really affordable. Like, I think there's meals that you can get between $1 to $4 US, which is insane. And if you think the pad thai is good here in the US, it's even better hot off the wok in Thailand. So yeah, between spicy stir fries and savory curries, you're bound to have a new favorite dish. And the best part is TEAN kind of helps you recreate your new favorite dish during a cooking class they offer in Chiang Mai too. So you'll be a pro chef in no time. But in addition to really, really good food, Thailand's a really solid option too because of the variety of study abroad programs it has and that it offers for students. So if you're able to go for a full semester, you could study at Mahidol University in Bangkok and live the busy city life there. But if you can only go for the summer, have no fear, they have options there too. And you can study the holistic health and wellness program, or you can pursue the environmental conservation program as well. And those are both in Chiang Mai, and those are really, really dope too. But the best part about studying abroad in Thailand is the excursions that TEAN has planned. Whether it's chilling in an ethical elephant park, touring the Siamese kingdom, you know, all the temples and all, or even the weekend in Krabi that they have planned, where you can explore the most iconic beaches that Thailand has to offer. When it comes to a lot of these Asia Pacific destinations, they are all really far away, but I cannot recommend it enough because you can learn how resilient you are and you can discover a newfound independence when you go so far away from your home and where you're familiar with.
I'm really glad that you both brought up excursions and these different cultural activities that are included in the program. And this kind of ties into the next question that I have for you both, because, you know, sometimes study abroad programs can be cheaper or comparable to a student's university, home university tuition. And it's also worth deciding how much you're willing to spend upfront. So my next question, and I'm kind of curious to hear like what y'all both have to say for this one, because I studied in Paris, which was kind of a mixture of the two. Paris can be expensive, destination. So I was living it up in terms of the destination, but I did stick to a budget because that's where I was in life back then as a student. But I ended up staying in Paris most of my time. I didn't travel a lot like other students on my program, but I honestly, in retrospect, really benefited from this. And I feel like I truly lived that Parisian life and got to visit all the museums that Paris got to offer. So I see pros and cons with both of these, or I see pros with both of these. So my last question to you both is, do you stick to a budget or live it up? What do you think, Betsy?
Honestly, that's a great question. And, you know, living it up doesn't have to be unattainable. It's just important to budget for dining out, activities, and just all the things you're going to want to pursue when you're overseas. When it comes to Asia Pacific, a lot of these destinations are more expensive, especially because of the flight that it takes to get there. And this includes Singapore too. But if you were to study abroad in Singapore, you'd be going to Singapore Management University, which is one of Asia's top business schools. And honestly, it's just a great school to enhance your critical thinking in a diverse environment. Also, bonus perk, one of the official languages of Singapore is English too. So you'll find yourself a bit more comfortable immersing yourself within the city, whether it's shopping in the city hawker center or enjoying a mouthwatering meal in Chinatown, all surrounded by these towering skyscrapers, of course, which is quite humbling. But outside of that, Singapore is a great travel hub too. Its proximity to other Asian nations is stellar. It's really easy to get around and it's pretty affordable too to travel once you're there, which also reminds me, speaking of other destinations, when I was in New Zealand, and Singapore kind of relates to this too, it's so expensive because of how much they depend on imports. So I know, for example, for me, Ben and Jerry's was twice as expensive in New Zealand as it was here in the US, which was kind of gutting, but you'll find alternatives that are just as good. Shout out to Tip Top Ice Cream, really solid ice cream. But regardless of where you study, especially these more expensive destinations, there's a lot of free things that you can do in each city, especially, again, the bigger cities. And it's pretty easy to find bargains as well. I know I found myself thrifting every once in a while. But before I forget, even though these destinations happen to be more expensive, there are a ton of resources that make them more accessible between scholarships, grants, financial aid. Maybe you go for a summer term instead of a full semester. There are different ways to bring down the price tag and for you to be able to go to your dream destination.
For those students like myself who prefer to stick to a budget though, think Spain, specifically Granada and Malaga. Granada particularly is in the southern part of Spain in Andalusia. It is a modern college town and home to remnants of Moorish culture and history. It's at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountain range as well, so there's natural beauty everywhere you go. And again, for our art lovers in the room, there is no better place to attend a flamenco dance than in Granada. Malaga, on the other hand, is a coastal city known for its phenomenal food, meaning seafood. So think of paella and gambas al pilpil. It's prawns in a delicious spicy sauce. It's also home to several world-class art museums, and it is the birthplace of Picasso. So there is plenty to see and do on a budget here, including snack, sip, sunbathe, and seeing those artistic masterpieces in those museums in person. Some more cities that are budget friendly include Cusco in Peru, Meknes in Morocco, and Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And by the way, even if you're going abroad on a budget, and there is no shame in that game because I did too, you can still live it up because I know I did. There's plenty of free and low cost stuff to do abroad, like Betsy said, including visiting local monuments and libraries, going exploring in your host city on foot, chilling in cafes, or even like spending time with your host family and local students and learning more about what they do for fun. They are experts in that city after all because they are locals. So they'll know how to get the most bang for your buck. And that's what I did to keep costs down while I was abroad. So.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing all of those great insights into all of the locations and from your personal travel experiences as well. So next, if you're still unsure how to choose your program, set up an advising appointment with our team and your study abroad office to get advice on what program options are the right fit for you. Our team and your study abroad office can help you narrow down your options that are available to you at your university. And then the next step after that would be apply. So after identifying your program, you want to apply through us. You'll need to complete your application with your university as well as with ISA or TEAN, depending on the location. And once you've completed the online app, you'll get access to your student portal where you'll complete a few more forms to be officially accepted into your program. After that, there are a couple other documents that you'll check off and complete, like your housing questionnaire will, of course, help you all along the way, especially like as you're booking your flights, applying for your visa if that's applicable to your program, and sharing more details for your program in regards to classes and more. And I want to make a quick note that if you don't have your passport yet, apply. I know many of you have probably heard there are delays at that. So if you don't have your passport and plan to study abroad later this year or next year, just apply now and get that out of the way. Throughout your whole application process, though, you will be assigned to a program manager who can help you throughout the entire process and answer any questions. So again, we're here. And then we're going to have some space for questions. Feel free to drop any questions you may have in the chat. As I mentioned, I studied in Paris, Nadine studied in Morocco, Betsy studied in New Zealand and has other travel experience as well. I believe Julia's in the chat. She studied abroad with us in South Korea. Let us know, do you have other questions you want to ask us today? It doesn't have to be about those destinations either. It can be about anything else that you may have. I did get a question sent to me. It's about housing. So the question was kind of to stick to where this or that. Apartment or host family. I know, Betsy, you did something different than those two options. So maybe I'll let Nadine go first about apartments or host family.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, funny thing about me, I studied abroad in Meknes, Morocco twice, and the first time was in an apartment, whereas the second time was with the host family. So, during my first program, I lived in an apartment around the corner from our study center. So, I was like never late to class. It was a good gig with two lovely roommates and a lovely host mom ish. She would just kind of come during the days and like help us cook and stuff. But she is host mom to me. So, shout out Haria. Um, and in my second program, I lived in a house on top of a church, like literally on top of the church in the middle of Morocco. Again, good gig, good time, with two awesome roommates and a lovely host mom. So shout out Sadia because she can put it down in that kitchen. That food was really good. So yeah, I mean, both are great options. I really like the host family the second time around. I didn't think I'd like a host family, but she really did kind of become like my grandma, my mom. And again, since host families are locals from that host city you're in, they are so knowledgeable about the city. They'll definitely help you work on your language skills, although of course, sometimes they do speak a good amount of English. Um, so yeah, definitely I would say do host families, but if you're more comfortable in an apartment, that's a great option too.
If you answered language learning versus English, I highly recommend the host family because it's a great way to practice your language skills outside of your classes. But Betsy, you did not do apartment host families, right? You did something else?
Yeah, I lived in the uni flats. It's like the university housing. So I actually lived in a house with three other people, one of them being my Kiwi host. Shout out to Tiariki. He's such a G. But I pretty much lived with a couple other like American study abroad students from different programs. And I was super close to my campus, was also never late, which was nice. I enjoyed that. But yeah, it was very like casual, laid back. Teen set up everything, which was really sweet. And yeah, it was a pretty like standard house, nothing too crazy. The cool thing about my Kiwi host though, he knew all about everything with like Dunedin and New Zealand in general. He's kind of like similar to like the host family feel, except he's a student too. But also like a nice taste of like kind of host family, kind of just like homies, like in between. So
So I did get another question, kind of more so relating to courses. Um, Obviously, you all had different majors. Well, I say obviously, audience doesn't know this, but they had different majors. Um, do you mind sharing a little bit about the classes that y'all took?
yeah, definitely. I could jump in there. So I studied tourism and hospitality at my home university. And when I was looking at different like colleges in New Zealand, I fell in love with Otago because of its really good tourism program. I studied destination management, I studied sport tourism, and they had a whole list of other options to choose as well for tourism specifically. That was one of the big reasons why I went to Otago. And I learned a lot. I know it was really cool. My destination management class, they had some like networking like connections in Queenstown. So I got to sit in on a meeting at the Queenstown City like council. And I got to learn about like tourism planning, like kind of like that urban planning kind of vibe. And that was really cool. So I went for my degree specifically. I know people who study abroad trying to just achieve some electives and have some fun, which is also a very solid option too. But Nadine, go ahead.
For sure. So I actually majored in communication studies, and then my minors were like Arabic and international studies. So I'll talk about the Arabic first. Obviously, language learning was a huge part of my decision to go to Morocco. Morocco is like one of the best programs to do if you want to study Arabic. And the one really surprising nice thing I found out about the Arabic classes you can take in Morocco is you can actually do 2 semesters worth of Arabic back to back. So I took intermediate 1 and 2 just during my 3 months in Meknes, which meant that I got my Arabic certificate like a semester early. So bonus points to me. Plus, the Arabic professor was just hilarious. He cared for us very deeply, but of course, like he would do little dances in class and keep us super engaged. So no falling asleep in Zaki's Arabic class ever. Aside from the Arabic though, something I really liked about the classes in Morocco were like, I went to kind of a smaller university and really niche topics, at least that had to do with like the Middle East and Islam and like North African culture, things like that. They're not really offered where I went to college. So I got to take classes in gender studies, the case of Morocco. So looking at kind of like feminism and gender studies in Morocco. I took Arabic versus Western media. So learning more about like Al Jazeera and how they kind of frame their media, which counted towards my communication studies major. Bonus points me again. I even took Islamic art, Islamic civilizations and artistic expression, a mouthful, but we took like an Arabic calligraphy class one weekend. So it was really fun being in these classes and learning about these things that I just didn't have access to at my home university and kind of getting out there like that. So that's my spiel on classes in Morocco.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I ended up taking all of my classes in French, so I was able to knock out my whole minor abroad, but I was able to actually earn some credits towards my international studies degree. Sometimes choosing a program, you end up choosing a program just based off of the classes that are offered in a specific location. So that might also help narrow down your search. So I'm glad you both kind of shared how that played into the destinations that you decided to go to, especially you, Betsy, with why you chose Otago. I don't see any other questions, but I know that Lily has shared a couple resources in the chat. So if you do want to schedule an advising appointment with us, that is, she just dropped that link in there. Before, I know she dropped a link to get connected with our alumni. So if you do want to chat with anybody who has studied abroad in a particular location, maybe it's Europe and you're trying to just narrow down your search based off a general geographic location, we can also connect you with some of our alumni who have studied abroad with us, and they can share more about how they chose their program too. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you were able to think of a few new ways again to narrow down your search for the right program. And again, we are here to help. We don't gatekeep, so please reach out to us. We want to help you find meaningful experiences wherever you go. So yeah, time to choose your new adventure. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, everyone.